Now, as educational institutions, we must be intentional in shaping an academic environment that responds to these shifts. Drastic as they are, we still have to cope because we have the mandate to produce the human capital for the industry. And let me leave you with this thought. The future belongs to those who prepare for it today, by Malcolm X. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Denere. I think my role is done now. I would like to invite Dr. Unene Gregory, who will be facilitating the next panel discussion. Dr. Unene Gregory is the Public and Private Partnerships Manager here at the Institute for the Future of Work. Dr. Unene, over to you. Let's give her a round of applause, please.
Morning all. Yeah, I think it's still morning. I think while we still wait for my team member to just set up, I'm going to invite our distinguished speakers to come back so we can engage them further on this topic. Ms. Lyle has had to step out, so she gives her apologies, but we should have then a bit more time for questions from all of you guys who've joined us today. Could you please ask our speakers back up in the not-so-hot seat for this panel discussion? Dr. Dinere? Anyway. All right. We have one new face joining us as a speaker, but I'll ask Mrs. Busi to introduce herself as we get into the conversation. So I think, as mentioned earlier on, this is a very critical conversation. You know, AI is, with every changing industrial revolution, technology seems to displace and shift, and people are always a bit panicky about the new wave coming in. And AI is no different. It's emerging to shape the financial services from banking, lending, investing, and how we interact and serve customers. And this also brings a lot of questions into mind as how do we regulate, how do we innovate, and how do we make sure we protect customers and workers as we adopt these technologies, and make sure that we also foster more inclusivity within the financial sector. And that will be diving into in this panel discussion. To start us off, panelists, I think the two doctors, we know who you are. We'll start with Usis Busi. Just introduce yourself and then answer the first question to all the panelists. As mentioned, AI is being blamed for displacing a lot of routine work and routine roles within the financial services. From your unique vantage points, what proactive steps should institutions be taking now to reskill and redeploy staff within the sector? This Busi?
My name is Busi. I'm from the Financial Sector Transformation Council. My interim CEO spoke earlier, so I'm just here to be a panelist on behalf of the FSTC. And as an organization that is advocating for transformation, we welcome AI. We believe that it has a lot of offerings for us as a society. We also are appreciative of what it brings, especially for inclusion, because we want our people to be included in the financial systems, and we believe that with AI we will be able to achieve greater strides. But at the same time, we also noticing that we need to make sure that we feed AI fairness. Because if we don't feed it fairness, it will be biased. And what we don't want is biasness. We want fairness, we want equality, we want justice. And for AI to achieve those, it is up to us to ensure that we feed it the correct information. And we also are welcoming that with AI, we will be able to actually include more people, but we also appreciate the fact that we also need to upskill and reskill some of our people to ensure that we are utilizing it to the best of its ability, and also we are utilizing it to ensure that we reach equality as well as economic inclusion for all our people in our society. It's all that we want to see happening: equality and justice and fairness within our people. We want to make sure that our people are also skilled properly and are also given opportunities to ensure that they utilize AI to the best of its ability. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that, Dr. Chelwane. From your vantage point, what steps should we be taking to reskill and redeploy staff within the sector?
I think it's important that we acknowledge that the traditional way of upskilling people or training people is challenged. I think Dr. Dinere mentioned in her presentation. From an industry point of view, what we need are skills, not certificates. We need skills. You saw the presentation the doctor presented there. So thanks. So by that I mean, if you can do something, you are better than somebody with a degree that cannot do something. That said, I don't say don't go to school. But I'm saying as you go to school, also be careful about when you use AI. Don't cheat so much that you pass and you don't know anything. Because we are finding that in the industry. Young people come from universities with certificates but know nothing because they cheated through the system. So as we let people, train people and get them upskilled, for me, we need more practicable or practical ways of getting people to know the work that they are training for. The good doctor here said you could do online courses, those short courses. Get a skill rather than just a certificate. That's the message I want to say.
Thanks for that. Doc?
Am I? Yeah, okay. It's all right. In the education sector, like I indicated earlier on in my presentation, everyone is looking at us. What are we doing in this era of artificial intelligence and emerging technologies, digital transformation? There is a lot of changes ongoing. You find that even our own students, yes, they are getting exposed to these technologies. They are trying to cope also on how to use them, even to do their studies. For example, the use of generative AI is even becoming a challenge in the education system. That are we producing a ripe person out there, a ripe graduate? A lot of plagiarism is going on. Some don't even acknowledge when they use the AI. But what are we saying? It's here and it's now. So what do? Let me take you back to the time when a calculator was introduced. Back then, people of our age who were doing arithmetic would add using our fingers, using words, even in the examination, using big figures, big numbers, we're doing it mentally. But then somebody introduced the calculator and it found its way into the education sector. There was a lot of noise. Hey, no, we can't, hey, we're spoiling these kids, blah, blah, blah. But was there a turning back? There wasn't. The same applies today. AI is here. Technologies are emerging every hour. We get new things. But maybe I should also say one other important thing is that as much as they are coming through, many as they are, remember these people who are producing them are also in business. They also want to make money out of that. So what are we saying? As the pace becomes so exaggerated, and as educational institutions, we are still left behind. While at least we are still trying to reflect on one technology that was introduced maybe a month ago, and we think it's very relevant for the curriculum, we are overtaken by events. That's the challenge that we are sitting with. Remember, those educators, they are also learning those technologies. The student is supposed to learn also. So we have two people here who have to learn the new technologies as they're coming. Where still the educator is learning, the student is learning, they have to prepare a graduate who, when they get to industry, the industry smiles and say, thank you, higher education. You prepared a relevant human capital for us. We have this gap, this disconnection. I don't know, maybe we're going to get suggestions from the students themselves on how we can address this. But what I'm saying is, we are making effort. Something is being done. A lot of reskilling is ongoing. A lot of retraining is going on. But we seem not to catch up with the pace. It's just too much for us. That's what I can say for now. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Doc. Now, coming back to the individual business at hand with the entities that you all represent, with the FSTC, Sis Busi, looking at your mandate on broadening participation across gender, race, and the economic strata, how can we leverage AI-driven tools to advance those transformation targets, particularly for the underserved communities and underrepresented groups?
We need to ensure that in terms of our recruitments or our recruitment policies, what we feed to AI speaks to equality. So that whenever there is recruitment processes that are taking place, the questions that are asked, the questions that are asked, the selections that we make are ensuring that we are going towards ensuring that we are equally represented in all our, whether it's management, whether it's even if it's non-management stuff, but equality should always be what we put forward to ensure that we have not only race but also gender representation in our employment processes. So it's important that I keep thinking of sorry about that. Yeah. So it's important that we use AI to ensure that we push for equality in our recruitment processes. We push for equality when we look at advancement of people in our structures that are already there. We also push for equality in terms of skilling people to make sure that when opportunities arise, they are actually ready for those opportunities to take over.
True. With most technologies, AI being one of them, we see a large concentration in urban areas. We see a large concentration of people that are already digitally versed, people that are already skilled in most senses. So from BASA's perspective, Dr. Shilwane, what initiatives would you recommend to ensure that AI-powered services reach rural areas, reach the underbanked and the non-banked, I believe you mentioned, or unbanked? Yeah.
Doc, I want to dispel that myth. Being in urban areas technically should give you an advantage, but it depends where you are. So I'll give you an example. I work in Johannesburg, right? There is a suburb there called Sandton, and there's 1 kilometer long street, where it's called the richest mile on the African continent. That's where all these banks and so forth are. So Sandton is a relatively wealthy suburb. You just need to cross. There's a little street called the M1. Yeah, you get to Alex. The same opulence that is across the road is not there. So whilst I do appreciate that by nature we would assume rural to not be so much in access, there are those kinds of people also. But now I'll answer your question. So I just wanted to say, yeah, sometimes rural actually can be a good thing for a person. But let me not go on that tangent. What we do as part of my duties at the Banking Association, I head up financial inclusion. And in financial inclusion, part of it is transformation, which I must be very nice to Sis Bosi here and Mrs. Mahori there. I must be very, very nice to them. Otherwise, I get hauled at the council meeting. But besides that, we also talk to training in terms of consumer financial education, and we also talk to micro, small, and medium enterprises. Now, in the training element, that's where we not only talking a training, but we are talking about access as well. So in terms of access, we tended to talk about access to bank accounts before. We are no longer talking that now because about 87% of South Africans have a bank account. The question is usability. Are they using it? How are they using it? Are they just using it for the 350 to come in and they take it out immediately and then for the rest of the month it's just lying dormant? But how do we engage South Africans to know and improve their financial well-being? In the same manner, we have to carry also the AI message. Because this thing is in there, but how do we do it? We just get you to understand how to use the apps. How do you become safe? If you notice, when you go into your banking app, most banks will have a message that tells you, do not give anybody your PIN, those kind of messages. That's part of some of the things that we do to drive information to customers. Unfortunately for me, I cannot talk to everyone, but I can only talk to the clients of the banks. But fortunately, most people do have a bank account somewhat, or related to a bank somewhat. So it's not very scientific in a sense, because I cannot tell you that exactly this one has happened in this particular way, but there are ways and means, at least to engage those that use the banking apps. And some banks will tell you, if you want to proceed, you must acknowledge that you have read this message, and should you not read it and you do exactly what they tell you, they will say, no, we won't pay you, we will refund you, should there be fraud. So it's also something that we need to take care of as users, not to ignore those messages, because they change and the threats become different. I'm now talking threats as opposed to opportunities. But let me pause there.
Thanks for that, Doc. I think you mentioned a very interesting point about the perceived penetration and use of AI and these advanced technologies in the community. And looking at how diverse our country is, I think it's often understated how much these technologies don't cater to everyone in terms of language and reach. So as a final question, Dr. Denere, before I open up for questions from the audience, how can we as higher education better collaborate with industry partners to make sure that the solutions that we develop within the space are locally relevant for our communities?
Thank you very much. Coming from the educational background, whatever steps we usually do or make decisions, we are informed by research. I believe we need to conduct some research, some surveys, to find out exactly what is lacking, what is critical, what is, what should be delivered like yesterday. And then we are not operating in the vacuum as educational institutions. We are supported by the industry. There are a lot of stakeholders in the education. We have the government as a stakeholder. We have employees as stakeholders. We have the community as stakeholders. So there are a lot of stakeholders that should come together and we engage. So some industries, they've actually approached institutions and made requests that are tailor-made to their specific industry. And they make sure that those programs are funded. They can even provide scholarships to make sure that those programs are supplied with reasonable enrollment to be able to cater for their needs. So the education systems can't operate in a vacuum. They have to reach out to everyone, and then they inquire on the needs that are there at that time, and then a curriculum is designed. And these days, what is actually happening is there is a lot of short learning programs. And these are very relevant. They don't take time. You find that some of these skills that are needed by industry don't need 4 years for someone to go through. In 6 months, intensive program. And then they are done. Then they go and have a work-related experience out there. Then fine, we've produced a relevant human capital for the industry, for everyone else. So I think we just have to engage with all the stakeholders, find out what they want, if they can sponsor, if they can fund scholarships, even the materials, and even supporting the training of educators or lecturers to go abroad and get these skills if we don't have the material yet in our country. That's all I can say for now. Thank you.
Thanks for that contribution, Doc. Before we wrap up our panel discussion, and I give you guys a chance to snag a bit of questions on one-on-one with our panelists, are there any questions from the floor? 2 hands. Okay. Could you perhaps borrow one of them?
Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you to all our speakers. I'm going to speak from a point of view. I'm also a lecturer, but I'm more an advocate for my students. Although I come from the engineering field, I'm thinking of TUT students as in the finance and the accounting side. There's a very profound statement our host said. He said, we want to have students that are ready for industry. And then I like the quotation that Doctor said, but I wrote it in my own words. about the AI use. You said AI will not replace teachers. I use teachers there. But teachers who uses AI will replace teachers not using AI. So that is lecturers. So now my question comes there. We hear about AI. We hear about short courses, but none of our speakers, and I also plead with speakers coming up, have not spoken to these students about the title of the courses they must study, the tools they must use. Look at our audience. For me, it was very informative because of the research background, so I'm absorbing it easily. But what about our students here, our audience? May I kindly ask, please give us AI tools they can use when they go back, even if it's for free. ChatGPT, we know, sir, is not reliable. But give us tools, and please give us the short courses so that the teachers, we cannot be replaced by the ones taking AI. Thank you.
Thanks. Maybe before our panelists answer, let's just take the two other questions from this side and then we'll wrap it up. Just to sneak in before I ask the other questions, I think the Institute for the Future of Work may be similar to UJ. Universities often have portals like ours in IFOW, where we list initiatives from different industry partners for our students to take from Microsoft, from the like. It would be great to perhaps even after this have a partnership with our stakeholders here and maybe centralize that information for dissemination for our students and for other universities, but I'll allow them to give you a more in-depth answer. Sir.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is IFOW. I'm from the University of Technology. I'm running my own company, which we're developing multiples of innovation systems. My company is called Isumila Matoda. We are actually developing one of the systems that are going to help us with fraud detections. When you lost your ID, you know what to do. From then, I'm not going to go deeper into it. Though I have a few questions to the panelists, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to ask one or can I ask all of them? Okay, I'm going to round it up as a one question though, but I will ask again. To all our panelists, as a company, what can I do to get funding so that I can keep my staff? So in the meantime, let me tell you this. I'm already losing some of my staff, and those are students whom are still fresh from the university. I'm training them, and then I don't even have a placement to place them into the working industry, more especially BASAP. Can you please help me? How can I actually place those students that I'm training into the financial sectors, because they're actually good in the work that they are doing? So, as they said one question, let me just stop here, then I will actually ask another question when I get time. Thank you.
I think, Buti, I'll also encourage you during the tea break and afterwards to make sure you snag the speakers and ask those follow-up questions you need to ask.
Hi, my name is Munaka. I'm a student. The question that I want to ask the panelists is this. We all acknowledge the fact that we're living in an era where AI is part of our everyday life. But the way that AI was introduced to community, at least let me say to South Africa, was that it's this thing that is so smart that it can do something for you. How can we as at least let me say, how can those on top that regulate the use of AI in South Africa find a way to take out the stigma that AI is here to replace, but to help an everyday user become more innovative and skillful while using it, rather than just throwing out short courses as to how to better use the AI, but how to use it as an assistant rather than that which replaces your actual input.
Thank you. So what I'm hearing, Kuti, is how do we fight perception of AI, and how do we make sure that our people leverage its use for something productive?
Yes.
Okay, right. Okay, panelists, I'm going to defer to you. I think it would be great if we had Ms. Lyle here to speak about the, the regulation part of it, but we'll make do. Yes, please.
Thank you for the questions. I'll speak to what I think is directly linking to me. When we talk of the skill gaps, I'll start with that one. The use of emerging technologies is mainly for assistance. The emerging technologies are our companion. The technologies are not there to replace anyone because they lack that human touch. As much as technologies are being developed at different stages, we are still at the very initial stage in terms of human cognitive level in these machines. Yes, they are trying to produce machines that should think like a human being. But look at that element. It's just thinking. But what about the emotional aspect? What about the human touch? How do they inculcate it in the machine? How do they embed it? Because that is our natural given ability. So, yes, I want to dispel the thinking that they are replacing us. No machine will ever replace a human being. Machines don't have blood running through them. Machines don't have emotions. Yes, they can go to what we call an advanced stage, but the human touch still will lack because that is God-given. So we must bear in mind that, yes, we can do everything. These developers can go to heaven and come back, go to the moon and come back in developing, but they will not breathe into the machine the element of emotional touch, the humanity aspect. So I think that has been addressed. So as much as you are existing in this world of technology coming up, don't be afraid that one day you'll be replaced by a machine as a human. You remain a human. And a machine is just your companion to reduce the burden, to increase efficiency. As human beings, we forget, we make errors, we get tired sometimes, but the machines can go on. But even if they can go on, they don't have the human touch. And then in terms of the skills that are required, yes, like I have said, that the machines will not replace us. They will help us do those repetitive tasks. But we still have to come in with our human touch. We still have to analyze data. There's a lot of big data that is being generated in this era. So because we are human, we have a limitation in terms of keeping these numbers and data in our heads. The machines have that kind of memory. But we are still there to analyze that data. Who will analyze it for us? We have to analyze. So the skills that are required are data analytics in this AI era. Then we also have to be aware of cyber security. There has to be training. That skill is needed. You need to decipher if this thing is genuine. We have a lot of cyber attacks going on. Even the banks are being attacked. The institutions are being attacked. So this skill of cyber security is also necessary. Then AI ethics. A lot of ethics are required in this. There's a lot of, because we say these machines don't have the human touch, we are still responsible for the ethical part of the use of these technologies. We don't have to use them in malicious ways. We have to make sure that we use them, responsibly, so that our society is not harmed. So the AI ethics are needed. And then the digital financial literacy. It is also another skill that is necessary. So in the institutions of higher learning, we are expected to include these in our modules and make sure the graduates that we produce has got these. Now, in terms of an example of some AI tools that can be used, today I'll only give you one, the Prezi for PowerPoint presentation. Maybe you can research more, but if you Google, go on the internet, you'll find thousands of them. But go and check Prezi what it can do. It can replace the traditional PowerPoint presentation. That's what I can say for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Doc. Dr. Shulane?
Thank you, Doc. You've covered most of the stuff. But what I wanted to underline is let it not be a them and us situation. We are in this together. And by that, I mean industry wants skill. You are there to provide the skill. And it's not anything new. It's been said. It's just that we need to do it even more. We need to just come together. You ask industry what they want and how they want it, and your job then is to provide it. The questions around funding and all those things shouldn't be a problem. I'm going to be slightly controversial here, but I think I'm true. I'm saying that, and I'm telling the truth. South Africa does not have a funding issue. It just has how we apply it. We've got Banksita in the house. They've got a lot of money that they need to disperse in terms of training. But it needs to be relevant to the industry of banking, right? So I'm just using them because they're in the house, but there are other sitters as well that are also sitting on money, but it is the skilling. So we need to come together to say, what do we need? What kind of a person or people do we need in the industries, not just in the banking industry, so that South Africa can stop being called an emerging economy and become an emerged one. At least they've stopped calling us a third world. Yeah, but now we are being, we're emerging. I don't know for how long we'll be emerging. So we need to fast track that. The other point I want to make is, let's also not be so scared of technology, this particular one. And as we get brave and not becoming scared, Africans need to code. Africans need to contribute so that when I Google strong black men, I don't get told illicit material, right? It is coded by someone obviously who's not African, who's not black, and for some reason doesn't like black men. So Africans in this room need to think about coding and learning how to use these machines. Don't be scared of them. Yes, they were created somewhere, but doesn't mean you are precluded to learning to use them and to control them. Control in a sense of coding. In terms of your business development issue, maybe let's have a private chat, because some of them may not be for everybody's ears. Otherwise, you may want to lose your business. Unless you want to use your business, sorry, that's the English I wanted to use. So let's have a chat. Okay, how do we dispel stigma? I think you're doing it already. I mean, the fact that we're chatting about it now and we are asking questions, we're talking, actually, is one of those things. But I just want to say, for the ears that can hear my voice now, I was reminded of a quotation. It's not what they call you that matters. It's what you respond to. In the same manner, I can say this thing is scary. If you choose not to be scared of it, it will not be scary to you. So let us not scare ourselves still and dead by saying, "Ibotata," or it's difficult, and we don't attempt to do it. I think that was one of the mistakes that happened in apartheid time, when we were told mathematics was difficult. And most people did not do mathematics because they had it in their heads that it was difficult. So in the same manner, AI is not a scary monster. It's not difficult. We can also use it to make sure we improve our lives as Africans. And remember, I'm saying Africans, I'm not saying South Africans, because there's a problem in South Africa. We tend to think we are divorced from the rest of the continent. If you think that way, you are very minute. There are people in Kenya who can teach us a lot of things around technologies and stuff. So collaborations between us and the rest of the continent are utterly, utterly important. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Doc. Sis Pusi, your final thoughts?
Thank you. Yeah, my phone today reminded me that AI can sometimes just do its own thing if it's not properly regulated. So one thing that I believe we need is actually regulation for AI, especially in the financial sector. How far do we use it? What are the terms and conditions of using it? And also, how do we ensure that we reach everyone in our society, even those that are in the poorest rural areas, to ensure that they are included, they are aware of what is happening in our financial systems, and they are able to take advantage of what can be beneficial for them. So it's really important for us to think about what kind of regulations we need to put in place to guard against AI. But at the same time, taking advantage of what AI provides for us. And I also think that in our conversations, in our Sunday dinners with families and friends, AI should also form part of the conversation. That is where we can dispel, the notion that AI is here to replace us. AI can never replace a human brain. We are creative. AI is not creative. It uses what already exists. We are able to come up with something that is not there as human beings. So we can never be replaced by AI. But we need to keep on ensuring each other so that we are able to take advantage of AI, but without fearing it. And lastly, I would want us to ensure that as we go forward and we apply AI, we ensure that we also assist our people, those that are not learned, to ensure that they understand what is happening. Let us talk to them. Let us not leave them outside of the conversations. Let us talk to them, whether it's our grandmothers. We spent a weekend with our mother and we're teaching her about AI and what it does and all the things, and she was very much surprised. And I think those are the kind of conversations we should have with our people so that they are not left behind. Let us ensure in all our conversations and all our doings that we put everyone more or less at the same level. Okay.
Thanks for that. I think to just sum up, in terms of the tools, we have a idea of the skills that are required in industry. So we need to work backwards in finding those AI tools and engaging with our partners in industry to kind of pick their brain on what's required. When it comes to scaling and placing staff members, students within it, the industry is saying they are ready, they are there. It's up to us to knock on those doors, and open those opportunities for ourselves and pester them until they do open those doors. In dispelling the myth and the concern around AI, it's really about having these conversations, but also tweaking, learning, and building yourself, and seeing what amendments and innovations you can create for your community, and show and demonstrate that AI can't replace the human touch as well. If any other questions you have, participants, I really encourage you guys to pick the brains of our speakers, both now and later on. Make sure you link up on LinkedIn, get business cards, really engage and get the most out of this for yourselves. We thank you very much. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't see our okay. I'll hand over to our new MC, and then Ms. Guntle will hand gifts over to our distinguished speakers. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much to our panel. Another round of applause for Dr. Gregory, Busi Dlamini, Dr. Chilwani, as well as Dr. Dinere for such an insightful discussion. Are you guys still okay? I bear some good news. I think we need a break, ne? Get some nice refreshment, come back with energy. I think the bigger taking as we go to a break is the fact that what we need are not certificates, but skills. But we must go to school. Having said that, let's take a 15 minutes break. It is now 11:15-ish, plus minus. Can we be back here at 11:30 sharp to continue with the second session? Thank you very much. We will now take a break. Thank you, and thank you very much to Ms. Papama Chiskawe, who was program directing from the beginning of the program up until now. And if you joined late, my name is Tebogo Magubani. I work for the Tshwane University of Technology. I manage a gigantic radio station called Tshwane FM, and I'll be your program director for the remainder of the session. And if you are joining us on our platforms on TUT-TV or Facebook, also a very warm welcome to you. You are joining us. We're coming to you live from Ditsela, where we have a thought leadership seminar, one of many that we do here, building up to the IFOW dialogue that is coming later on in the year. And today we're looking at AI and technology in the financial sector. We're starting our second session. And to start our second session, I think we need to just leap over from the learnings that we got from the first session, whereby we were reminded by Tate Chilwani that AI won't replace bankers, but bankers who use AI will replace the other bankers who are sleeping on the job. So having said that, let's start our second session by inviting very prolific and exciting speakers that are going to take us through to the afternoon. To start it off with, Mr. Vuyani Ntanjana, the head of strategy and research at Banking Sector. And he's going to be talking to us about the role and the mandate of the banking sector in closing the skills gap in the sector. The skills gap that we're talking about, where we need a skill and not the paper. He's going to help us answer that. Let's give him a round of applause as he starts off our second session. Let's try a bit more. Can we do better than that? Welcome, Mr. Ntanjana.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for inviting us as the bank sector to come and talk about the role and mandate of the bank sector in closing the skills gaps in the sector. I think my work has been made easy by the previous presentations. When I listened to them, they touched almost on many issues that I will be talking about today in my presentation. And I think I also learned a lot from their presentation. Indeed, I want to commend them on the work they have done, because there were so many things to learn and so many perceptions and misconceptions to unlearn. Our presentation today is structured in this format in terms of the table of contents. We'll look at our mandate and our vision, our critical stakeholders, and also we'll be talking about declining and emerging occupations, and we'll talk about professional skills required in the banking sector, short courses needed, and the interventions that the banking sector is offering. Ladies and gentlemen, you know that there are 21 sitters in South Africa, but today we'll be specifically talking about the bank sector, whose mandate, is as a training authority. It shows that it's a statutory body established through the Skills Development Act of 1998, amended by the Skills Development Act 26 of 2011. And the bank sector is established to enable skills, and its stakeholders to advance the national and global position of the banking and alternative banking sector. In terms of our vision, because I think it is critical that we understand our vision and our mission, the bank sector is want to be recognized as a center of excellence and innovation for skills development in the banking and alternative banking sector. And the mission is to facilitate skills development through partnerships and enable stakeholders to advance the national and global position of the banking and alternative banking sector. And our values are respect, integrity, collaboration, and professionalism, accountability, and diversity. What is our role? First of all, before I go there, I need to explain to the audience that there are legislative and policy frameworks that guides our work. We have to comply with those legislation in terms of the work that we are doing as an organization. One of the most important elements of our work is that we need to develop a research agenda that addresses the sectorial and national priorities. And in terms of developing that research agenda, we should not be thinking on behalf of the sector and the stakeholders. Sometimes we should make sure that we get those research topics from them. Therefore, in many instances, when we develop a research agenda, we consult with the banking sector, with the employers, to find out from them what are the critical research topics and research issues they want us to research. On the other hand, we also look at the previous research and also look at the previous recommendations to see what are the other areas that needs further investigation. Then that is the research agenda. That is a compliance process because we report to DHET. That research agenda has to be approved by our board in order to be submitted to the DHET. Therefore, it is very critical that we develop that research agenda, which is comprehensive, indicating what research project we'll be conducting, for the maybe plus minus 5 years. And our role in that, we will be identifying topics like labor market intelligence in the banking and alternative banking sector. And we want to understand the drivers of change. What drives the change? What drives the change in the banking and alternative banking sector? In the previous presentation, I think it was for the Financial Council, just forgot. But I think they talked about the drivers of change that are sort of related to our drivers of change. Then we also have to understand employment dynamics in the sector, and we have to understand the critical occupations in the sector and to identify common skills gap among the labor force in the sector. And one of the most important documents that we have to produce is a research report. Employers submit the WSPs, the Workplace Skills Plan. The Workplace Skills Plan is a tool that is used for data collection that gives us the status of what are the training needs of the employers. Therefore, we call that WSPs. Therefore, usually, in terms of the process, the WSPs are submitted, starting from the 1st of December up to the 30th of April. But there's an extension that is legislated, to say we should give the employers to give the WSPs to submit the WSPs up to the 31st of March. Then from there, we will take volumes of that information, of those questionnaires, and analyze them and produce a critical report called the Sector Skills Plan, commonly known as the SSP. And the SSP is a research report that guides the strategy of each and every sector in South Africa, because in the SSP, it will be telling us about the skills that are in demand. Therefore, from there, we will then formulate the programs that we need to make sure that we develop as form of interventions to make sure that those skills that are in demand are achieved. Then the other role that we do as the bank sector is that we have to implement the skills development intervention recommended in the SSP. I've already alluded to that, to say once that research is produced and indicates to us what skills are in demand, therefore we have now to design program as interventions. And we have to identify and partner with critical stakeholders in the sector to implement the skills development interventions. As you may be aware or may not be aware, sometimes we work with different stakeholders who are our implementing partners. We don't do everything by ourselves. Sometimes we will issue or publish funding windows or tenders so that other stakeholders can apply, so that they can be able to implement some of our programs. Therefore, that is why we are saying we work with other stakeholders. And one of the things that we do is that we conduct evaluations in terms of our interventions. We do our tracking and tracing studies to check the effectiveness of those interventions. It is critical to make sure that when we design a program, we should be able to measure if the program is effective. Do we need to continue with the program, or do we need to discontinue and start another program? Therefore, our critical stakeholders we partner with include institutions of higher learning, your universities, University of Technologies, TVETs, and community education colleges. Employers in the banking sector, research institutions, corporate or business, NGOs, CBOs, NPOs, government departments and municipalities, professional bodies and regulatory bodies, as well as labor representatives. Those are all stakeholders that we work with. Then, now zooming into the research itself, this is what we always look at, more especially when we are preparing to develop the SSP, the Sector Skills Plan report, which I said is the Bible of the SETA. You know, it's a roadmap of the SETA to make sure that it develops its strategy. We need to understand what are the drivers of change in the sector. Ladies and gentlemen, we work in a very fast-moving sector. The banking sector is very fast. We are more like chasing a moving target. Because sometimes a skill that was in demand in the past 3 years or in 6 months is no longer that relevant, because there are so many changes that are taking place within the sector. Therefore, that is why I'm saying we're chasing a moving target. Therefore, we need to understand the drivers of change and conduct a cutting-edge research that is helpful to the sector, and also looking at the national priorities. And what we found in terms of our research, in terms of the drivers of change, we found that digitalization and technology and new technologies, changing customer expectations, regulatory changes, risk and cybercrime, economic shifts, geopolitics, environmental, social, and governance, ESG. I will not elaborate in each of those, otherwise we won't finish. But those are the key drivers of change. I think in the previous presentation, those drivers of change were also there. Therefore, we have some kind of similarities with other previous presentations. Now I'm challenged in terms of my eyes. I can't see. That is why I wanted to sort of we thought that as we come here and, you know, having to talk to different, you know, people who are here, more especially students, it is important for us to explain to them what are the declining occupations globally in terms of our research, so that when you choose courses, you choose courses that are relevant. You know, when you choose courses that are relevant. You don't choose courses that are no longer in demand. We thought that is very critical for this kind of audience, because we have students here. Therefore, if you look at that slide, we have a list of occupations that are declining globally. And sometimes when an occupation was saying it's declining, we're not saying that occupation is no longer there. But it's just that there are changes in terms of, you know, the occupation itself. Maybe now it includes element of digitalization and automation. Therefore, if, for instance, you were an old bookkeeper that depends on trial balance and the ledger in a manual format, but now that process has been automated, you know, therefore you have to look at that kind of upgrading, the occupation itself. Therefore, I want us to be very careful when we talk about declining occupations, so that we don't think that when an occupation is declining, it's no longer important. It's still important, but now there are changes in terms of the needs for that occupation to be upgraded. And also, we have emerging occupations, those that are in demand, globally, which we believe it's important to share. I so wish that this kind of presentation will be shared with the students so that they can see all this, because I won't go through each and everything that is here, so that the student can be able to see the emerging and the declining occupations, so that when they make their choices in terms of their careers, they know that this thing is in demand. And what is coming from our sector skills plan, the research, I said, it guides the strategy of the bank sector. When we analyze the data, we look at critical occupations emerging from the sector. We just pick the first 10. Otherwise, there were so many. We just pick the first 10. What is coming out? What is in demand? For instance, we've got ICT systems analyst, developer, programmer, mathematician, database designer, administrator, software developer, data management manager, finance manager, data analyst, bank worker, and corporate general manager. Therefore, thank you, Evans. Therefore, this is what is emerging in our research. These are the skills that are in demand. There are number, we just pick the first 10, Again, we have professional skills required by the banking sector. Some of the slides we're presenting here, because I indicated earlier on that sometimes we commission our work, we give it to other research institutions to do our work. Therefore, what we're presenting here is some of the findings that came from our research on the future of work, because we wanted to understand what are the skills required by the sector. Therefore, if you look at that slide, it tells you, what comes out so funny is the sales and marketing, also creative, integrative, and business intelligence. You can go through and see how important those skills are. Then, of course, we need to, when we have skills that are in demand, we need to understand what can we do to offer those skills. Therefore, we also thought that it is important to bring a slide like this on short courses needed to close the skills gaps. We highlighted those courses. Of course, you saw from the histogram that sales and marketing, self-management, skills, self-management skills, time management, emotional intelligence, they are emerging strongly. Therefore, these are some of the short courses that now are demanded by the employers. You can look at all. There's nothing that is not important in those slides, but, of course, they differ according to the degrees of their importance, as per the data that was collected during the time of the research. Then, what do we do as interventions? What interventions, skills interventions implemented by the bank sector? Now that we have all this research, we identified all the skills that are in demand, and we even have the short courses to address these skills. Therefore, what does the bank sector do to intervene? Of course, we have the reskilling, upskilling, outskilling the workforce. It has emerged in the previous presentations. But as I present these interventions, I will also be sharing with you the challenges with each of these. When it comes to reskilling, the banks are so protective of their information. Sometimes we don't know what are the needs of the banks in terms of reskilling. That's one of the challenges we face as the sitters. To an extent that I think around about 2021, 2022, there were retrenchments within the banking sector. And we tried to do a stakeholder engagement with the banks with the purpose to understand which positions are affected by the retrenchments. it's very difficult to get that information from the banks. And also the other problem, that information is not coming from the WSPs. Therefore, if that information, it was easy to get, we were to develop programs for reskilling before people are retrenched, so that we look at the jobs that are at risk. We look at the jobs that are at risk and we begin to do the reskilling program. But now, due to the engagement processes that were started with the sector to say, we need to tell us information, because it's not helping to say, these people have lost jobs, therefore, can we reskill them so that they can be employable? And they're already ejected by the system, you see. Therefore, we have now some kind of aggressive creativity to deal with that matter, to make sure that we engage the banks, we engage our skills development facilitators to provide this kind of information to us, so that when we design reskilling, upskilling, and upskilling programs, we make sure that we design programs that are relevant to the sector. Because reskilling means you can still retain your job, or reskilling means you can still get another job from somewhere while you are still working within that particular organization. Therefore, those are the challenges we face. Then, skills program for the employed and unemployed. Here, in many instances, when we look at the skills programs, we realize that many skills programs like short courses, many skills programs like short courses are favoring the employed. And some of those courses, they are used for more like staff development courses. And yet, we need to have this skills program for the unemployed. But the problem is that some of these skills programs are not offered by the universities and they are not accredited. Therefore, we need to look at the issue of accreditation of the skills program so that young people can benefit from this. Bursaries for the employed and for unemployed. One of the problems we face with bursaries, ladies and gentlemen, is that we have got an issue of double dipping. Because sometimes when we fund students, we don't pay all costs. Therefore, if, for instance, the fees for the student is 80,000 per annum, we ended up paying 60,000 due to shortages of funds. Then the student ended up going and applying for another funding from another sector, and it gives us a problem of double dipping, where, for instance, we ended up having findings, from the Auditor General. Therefore, what we have resolved now, we said we want to have an all-cost design and all-cost bursary, so that when we fund a student, we fund a student on everything, so that a student does not go and apply for other bursaries. Learnerships and internships, we're also offering that. But what we found is that sometimes we find that these learnerships are not specific to the financial, to the banking and alternative banking sector, because our process is that we should develop these skills in the banking and alternative banking sector. Development of occupational qualifications in partnership with the QCTO and the sector. This is one of the challenges, because when you develop an occupational qualification, it takes a long time. Sometimes when that particular occupation is approved, find that that particular occupation is no longer in demand, because the time it takes to approve those occupations. And fund the work integrated learning program. One of the things challenges we get from the TVETs and the universities of technology is that we hardly get learners who have got financial skills who are applying for this kind of work integrated learning programs. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Another round of applause for Mr. Vuyani Ntanjwana, who's the head of strategy and research at the banking sector. I think a take home from his presentation is that the banking sector moves very fast. And as I was sitting there whispering things, and I agree, when we sit on the table, we whisper stuff to each other. Young people sometimes are in limbo on what to study to keep up with the skills requirements. And then he said, I must give you this tip. Instead of going to TikTok and do the dance challenges, you must go in there and search for what courses to study. Clap, 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 yes. what AI courses to study, and study those, and then your life and future will change. Another round of applause for Mr. Vian Tanjana. Up next, we have the head of architecture and PMO. He'll tell us what PMO is at the African Bank. And he is going to talk to us about AI and tech in the financial sector, integrating the marginalized through technology. And his name is Mr. Fani Mawela. Let's give him a round of applause as he comes and addresses us. Mr. Mawela.
Thank you very much. So yeah, just to explain my job, an elevator pitch. So my job is to work with companies to predict the future and advise them in terms of making the right investment decisions today. Simple as that. So, okay, so today, this is what we're gonna do. I'm running a risk of repeating what has been said before, so I'm gonna try to be agile. So let's try. So we're going to do this presentation together, all right? So if you have your phone, take it out. If you have Gemini, download or open it. You have ChatGPT, download, open it. Claude, Perplexity, you see, I'm offering tools, to learn. These tools are going to help us through this presentation, all right? Now, let's have fun a bit. So there's an AI tool called Suno, S-U-N-O. Okay, you can open it, download, and I've downloaded it, and I'm gonna ask it. So this app creates music, songs. So I am telling it, please create Amapiano hip hop song about TUT, ... students being best with AI innovation. Let's see what it does. So it's processing. Okay, there you go. So it's ready to play. Let's see. So you can do yours as well. Oh yeah, the network is bad here. Now, the researchers, that's another thing. Today we're talking about inclusivity. Okay, so the network, it's letting me down here. All right, there we go. All right, let's see. Sure, let's play. All right, so there's a clicker here. So everybody, do the same, create your own song, and then we're gonna have fun and play the song, all right? So here's the first question, all right? Do you believe AI is a form of GPT? Now the question is that, what is GPT? So you can go into your Claude, Gemini, and ask, what is GPT? General purpose technology. So we're working together, isn't it? All right. Now, this is what I came up with. So a GPT is general purpose technology. So basically, it's those technologies that happen once in a while. They literally change how the industries look, how life changes. We can think about electricity, we can think about steam engine, we can think about internet. But what tends to happen with these technologies is that they create new industries, they create new jobs. They literally append life. And what then happens is that when these things happen, and remember my topic is around the marginalized, these technologies, they create opportunities for the ones that were left behind by the previous industrial revolution to leapfrog and join the journey. But it's really about us as communities, as countries, as regions, to embrace them and try to catch up with the first world. So for what I'm saying, I've got a hypothesis here, and my hypothesis is that by leveraging these technologies, we can create and accelerate paths, all right, and pathways that really leads us to digital inclusivity and financial inclusivity. That's my hypothesis. Let's test it, and let's see how they've done a great job. All right. Anybody, have you gotten from Claude, Gemini? Am I correct? What thing is correct? You guys are not helping me. You don't have? All right. So, still, oh yeah, the song. Okay. I'm saying on Gemini, did you ask it about what is GPT? Okay, confirm if I'm correct. We're working together. I don't want to lie to you. All right. Cool. So let's move on. So today, I'm going to focus only on two areas. I mean, this area is big, AI and all of that. I'll focus on job displacement and digital inclusion. And I was very careful there by saying digital inclusion as opposed to financial inclusion. I'm trying to be as broad as possible there because, we do have regulators here. Again, you need to be very careful about financial inclusion. So here I'm talking about inclusion in general. So let's start with job displacement. So again, I went to our colleagues' Perplexity, I think this time. And I asked him, do you remember the guy called Ludwig von Mises? And what did he say about Industrial Revolution and job displacement? Okay. Then I learned a lesson there that from first Industrial Revolution, when these GPTs were happening, there were job displacement, but this job displacement didn't lead to a mass sort of loss of jobs. They actually created new types of jobs. All right? Now, the new way of thinking about job displacement is to start thinking about what jobs does this technology or revolution create. All right. Now, I forgot to mention that I am a product of TUT, by the way. And when I was writing my final year, and I just want to compliment Mr. Mhlomi in terms of what you mentioned. When I was doing my final year, organizations were flocking into TUT to look for employees. And I remember I was interviewed when I was writing my final exams, and my job letter on job offer said you start on the 1st of December. And as you know, the results come later, so I was confused. So how am I going to start without being qualified? But anyway, it just shows that from ages ago, this institution has been attracting attention from industry in terms of sourcing skills. So let's keep it up, all right? But what's interesting now is that if it takes 3 years, 4 years to do NQF 6, 7, 8, go to, again, my ChatGPT and ask it, how often does Amazon deploy code in production? And you come something like every 11 seconds or something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong. But the point is this, if organizations like Amazon are going that fast, how do we as organization, as institution from learning, keep up with that kind of a change? And the doctor, I'm scared to mention him from UJ, did highlight that issue. All right, so let's move on. So I have some research, so I'm not going to go through this, but the reality is that AI-related jobs are on the ascendancy, all right? And I've got slides there to show you which are those jobs, but I just want to focus on the key ones. And I'm deliberate here that I'm not mentioning the technology-based one. I'm not mentioning your data engineering, your computer science, and whatsoever. One that you actually have been doing today with me was you've been prompt engineers. By you going into this ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and learning how to ask it questions, you are actually starting a new job called prompt engineer. Now, again, go into ChatGPT, Gemini, and ask it, where are the opportunities for prompt engineers? Okay? And I'm sure it will tell you things like helping language models. Oh, by the way, there's a prompt for you. Where are the opportunities for being a prompt engineer, more especially focusing on the fact that the large language models don't have Zulu. So I want to contribute to Zulu, language on the large language model and see what it gives you. The point is this, colleagues, and my dear program director talked about the whispering. The information is there. Okay? So I've started by showing you how to create music and probably to create TikTok, but I'm helping you to go through the process that says, now how do you move into areas that really matter? How do you skill yourself? How do you prepare yourself? And and then just to complete on this slide, and you'll see some of these things, really, guys, it's not about being technical or being a technology-based skill. You can come from finance, you can come from legal, you can come from marketing, sales. There are opportunities opening up in terms of new jobs being available there. So I just want to go quickly because I'm running out of time. What's interesting is that when you do the analysis of these new jobs, and remember we talked about displacement, meaning the new technology get rid of other jobs. So what is these new jobs that are emerging consisting of? And some of the colleagues did mention, really it's about cognitive abilities, interpersonal skills, because really large language models don't have interpersonal skills. They don't have the aura, they don't have the spirit, they don't have, they're not human beings. So if you're going to invest in yourself, those are the areas I believe, you should look for in terms of skilling. Now let's move to inclusivity. All right, so really the next problem to solve here in the banking and financial space is really not about, and I mean one of the colleagues did mention here around, proliferation or coverage, okay? It's really about usage, okay? We know banking app penetration is high, but the issue is that what are we using it for? And we need to solve for that. It's really not about, banking products as we know them, because the reality is that we have seen a phenomenon that's called mailbox banking. Literally, the money goes into a bank account and it leaves. How do you solve for those problems? Those are the next generation problems we need to solve for. And that's where AI kicks in and to help solve those problems. And I'll skip the others. So from that perspective, so I'd like to really, maybe let me jump this once. Before I jump, let me share something. I come from African Bank, and I'm not yet representing African Bank. I'm here as a former student of TUT, as a colleague, as somebody who's interested in AI, as that somebody, if you see me on the street, stop me and engage me about these things. But I just want to share something about African Bank. In the past few months, maybe 12 months, we've deployed certain capabilities. And one of them we called Wealth Assist. It's really an AI-driven platform where if you log into our platform, it helps you and guides you through, building wealth. It teaches you the difference between savings and investment, between being rich and being wealthy. So it takes you through that. But what impresses the most is the last one we deployed, and we're going to do big marketing about it. It's called Isigo. Now, Isigo is a curated platform in terms of, we don't wake up in the morning and say, I want to buy insurance, I want to buy a bank account. You wake up and say, I want to, get married, I want to graduate, I want to have a child. The idea for us from African Bank is for you to live your dreams and help you to curate you through the journey in terms of how do you become financially fit to achieve those goals. So if you download our app, click in there, you'll see those good things that are happening there. So just wanted to share that with you. So yeah, in conclusion, colleagues, a lot has been said, and I'm going to repeat it again. The reality is that we need to get together as colleagues, as entrepreneurs, as corporate, as regulators, educators, to really define these new ways of bringing the marginalized through the use of these technologies into the mainstream economy. With that, I'd like to say thank you. I'll leave this one. So did you play your song?
It's not done yet. Ntate Mawela, ela ya GPT utabutse, wait. I asked GPT, well, maybe because I asked ChatGPT about ChatGPT, maybe. Leonite Tabut. You said it stands for General Purpose Technology. It says no. It stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformation. A round of applause again for Mr. Fanny Mawela from the African Bank. Yeah, it's interesting. He kept us so busy. We were creating songs, prompty, Zulu prompty. But the nicest thing is he's a TUT alumni. A round of applause for that. I guess that gives a little hope to you students sitting in the room that in 3 years to come, you'll come here and tell us about Prompty and Gemini. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we move on to our next speaker, and he will be talking to us about AI and tech in the financial sector. Again, understanding and harnessing opportunities created by AI and tech in the sector. And he's a senior manager for fintech partnerships and market expansion at Vodacom. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our next speaker, who is Duvesh Maharaj. Keep those hands going. Louder, louder, louder. Give him a round of applause. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, Tshwane University of Technology. Sure. So I'm sure the previous speakers have left all of you quite engaged and interested. But more so than that, I think the presentation I'd like to give you is to really talk about what are some of the realities that many of us are going to face. I was once posed with an interesting question by a friend of mine, and he says, you know, as a youth in South Africa today, what happens if you do not get into a graduate program or you do not get into an internship? I mean, these are our realities that we face. At 70% unemployment, we are worrying about AI and tech. And before even the doing, we need to focus on the being, which is, as human beings, how are we training ourselves to future-proof? So hopefully we answered that question in today's presentation. So I heard everyone talking about an AI skill set. Well, here's just some of the nodes we'll have to master in order to become AI experts. And I'm sure it's a lot for you to digest at this stage. But given this view, this is obviously a technical view. I'll give all of you an option. We can either do a commercial and practical route to this presentation today, or unpack that heavily technical presentation. So by raise of hands, who wants us to do a commercial and practical view? Okay, perfect. It's obviously unanimous, right? The truth is, not all of you will become technical AI developers and understand technology from a code perspective. And is that okay? How many of you feel it's okay? Sure, I agree with you, it's okay. But what's the alternative? If a potato can become vodka, then you can become anything you want to be. And why do I say this? When you go to a braai, what is the first thing you do to have a successful braai? You light the fire. And before even doing anything, it's important that all of us start with a sense of self-belief. Do we really believe we have a place in an AI future? Do we really believe in ourselves? Have we thought about our manifesto of impact that we want to have in terms of the industries we want to work in, the problems we want to solve? And I think it's very important that one starts there. Because yes, technology will constantly be evolving. Like our honorable speaker mentioned, there's 11,000 lines of code being developed every minute. So where does that leave you? That leaves you with having a sense of self-belief and a passion for whatever it is you want to embark on. That right now might be sending 100 CVs on different websites. I can tell you that's your reality to my audience. I've specifically curated this presentation for our youth of South Africa today. It's not going to be highly technical, but more focused on practical examples. Your current reality is you're updating your CV. Some of you are going to the extent of door-to-door businesses, leaving your CVs at the gate. So with that being said, we have to first solve for that burning desire of what is it we want to solve for. So what are the key outcomes in this technology era that we want to solve? We want to expedite a vision and mission. Let's start with understanding what is our vision and mission as individuals. So yes, you have different industries which some of you might be exposed to or may not be exposed to. Banking, insurance, retail, FMCG. And there's enough information on the internet for you to obviously begin understanding these different industries, even without actually being there. There's research papers, there's ChatGPT, we spoke about prompt engineering. What does, for example, the future of banking look like? You can speak to ChatGPT and it can educate you around these things. Develop best-in-class sales and service models. Ultimately, every corporate today is focused on sales and customer service, as well as obviously retaining customers in the various fields. So, I mean, you don't need to be an expert. Whether you did a computer engineering degree or the business in administration degree or a creative arts degree, you know, these principles are universal. And why do I say that? Because I want you to get that self-belief that, hey, do not feel despondent if you didn't do an AI and computer engineering degree. We all have a role to play. Every organization wants to grow their net income and achieve economic development metrics. You might hear about ESG. Improving balance sheets, acquisitions of customers along the value chain. And then if you look at investments and what they promise investors, a fair forward PE ratio. So for those in finance, you'll relate to that. So I'll quickly move forward. So within fintech, you have two business models. One is to say, this is the customers who we target. You have a business to consumer. So for example, a Debonaire's Pizza is a business to consumer business. You have business to business, where, for example, there might be a water sanitation company providing services to the government. You have business to, like I mentioned, business to government. Platform businesses like Uber. You have crowdfunding businesses. I'm sure some of you may have used some crowdfunding platforms, Back a Buddy as an example. And then you've got peer-to-peer businesses. Businesses that are built on each other engaging one another. And then to support that, there's technology, cloud computing, big data, machine learning, and all of those things. So this is, in summary, how you can paint this universe of how all of these moving parts fit in. So some of the fintech initiatives you'll see taking place lives across these verticals: payments, e-money, wealth tech, crypto, finance, lending, alternative credit models. I've incubated, just some background, I'm a startup incubator, so we're currently working with a lot of companies who are developing new forms of credit modeling, where our traditional banking sector is being disrupted. So what is fintech hoping to achieve? One is simplification, two, transparency, three, using analytics to solve for our customer problems. So you might hear of terms called personalization. So for example, when you're in Netflix and you're watching your favorite show and they give you a recommendation, that's the use of analytics, to say that we are trending and watching how much of this content a person is using. And lastly, let's reduce friction. So you might see where previously you needed to go into a branch to open a bank account, you're doing it from the comfort of your home. Why? Because they're reducing friction in the onboarding process. They're using technology to do things like KYC. So how many of you had to, in order to open your bank account, put your phone up to your face and take a scan? You all, I mean, look at that. We're all familiar with that. That's reducing friction, right? But more so than that, what happens if you do not get into a graduate program? The problem we're solving. You do not get into an internship. You're not an AI tech expert. Where do you fit in? And that's where we need to understand stimulating a mindset of innovation. And that comes from, one, acquiring knowledge through activity. So pick an industry, do your research, understand what problems those industries are facing. Search for trends and driving forces. So understand that industry from an expert point of view. That will then help you to craft storylines, develop problem statements. that can stimulate the right type of conversations in the industries that you want to unlock. Because truth is, if you not enter a graduate program, you not become an intern, you're going to have to be having a very well curated CV. You're going to be able to have to network. When you're networking, what is the conversations that you need to have to build trust from a competency perspective? So yes, as much as you've come out of university, there's a requirement that you put in some of your own efforts to understanding the industry in which you want to serve. And then, how do I define innovation? I'm sure all of you kind of battle with this question. And for that, I'll introduce you to something that I use called the Scamper model. So it's substitute. What can be replaced? Combine. What ideas and functions or processes can be combined? And I'll give you some use case examples of this. What can be adapted from other industries? Modify. What can be changed to improve it? So for example, even if you're not an AI tech engineer, one can apply their minds to mapping an as-is process and understanding, hey, why this doesn't make sense? How can I make it better? Put to another use. Can this be used for something else? Eliminate. What can be removed or simplified? And lastly, reverse. What if you did the opposite? So this is a framework for you to start thinking and stimulating innovation mindset, because it's not always this unicorn idea. You leave more despondent. So, hey, here's a complicated MBA for all of those master's graduates in the room around thinking innovation. But for me, it's pretty simple. Create an idea, have the skills to achieve that idea, and then obviously achieve the funding to build it. And that funding does not have to be a gazillion rands. An idea and a prototype in the current ecosystem can cost you as little as 10,000. Where is the real issue? The real issue is defining the ideas and the problems in which we want to solve. If you can train yourself to solve problems, you're going to future-proof yourself. Even if you do not have the skills to build an AI tech, that can be found on the internet, that can be found at incubation forums. We can definitely help you with solving for the skills. I'll quickly move on. I see my time is running out. So this is just a high-level view of how different companies have solved parts of the value chain. So I'm an AI tech founder myself, and can I tell you what tool I've built? I built a tool to solve for the lack of access to documented IDs in our township ecosystem. Many of them lose their IDs. They do not have the funds to go or the day to spend collecting their IDs. Insurance companies are now using my technology. If you call in to claim for a funeral plan or life cover, or any other product that requires ID verification, they use my technology. You don't actually have to send an ID via email, which is me solving a problem that existed previously. I have 3 business models here that play a role in transforming this industry. One is a platform orchestration. So I'm sure all of you know IFOW. IFOW basically collates all different insurance information and puts it into a single platform, right? The case for digital marketplace. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Discovery Insurance, where if you run a certain amount of time, it gives you rewards. If you go to the gym so X amount of time, they give you rewards. This is called a digital marketplace, where it's integrated into your lifestyle. And then there's AI. So AI can play a role in network optimization. So for example, we've built a large language model that can predict when a base station is going to go down even before it goes down, so that we can keep the network up, as an example. And many other use cases. Sorry, I'm under pressure for time. So I can unpack all of these use cases with you. But now to the point of what happens if I do not get into a graduate program, I'm not an intern. Here's a blueprint of a research paper that one can embark on. I'll use the township economy as an example, where so I incubate and mentor a lot of young graduates. So one of them actually put this together, and I'd like to demo it to you. He had no background and he now currently is the head of township economies at a major bank. And this was done when he didn't actually have a role in the company. So a framework around what is the opportunity within the township. So some stats. Roughly 200 packs of local snacks are being sold. About 6 posts related to township economies are being done daily. He put in this own effort, and he curated his future, because really you are in control. He did a market sizing. All of this using information on the internet. Industry breakdown. How big is this industry? How are these industries growing year on year? Because really storytelling is the #1 skill set as per Harvard 2025 jobs of the future. It's not an AI techpreneur, it's not crypto master or whatever it is. It's a story, the head of storytelling. If you can tell a story, before even getting to a tech solution, if I can move you off your chair by either through excitement, sadness, happiness, by clearly telling you or getting you to understand the problem, no one will really care about the solution, and you can test me on that. Growing businesses in townships, and I'll share with you this. Some of the technologies, sorry, I'll just go back one slide. So some of the technologies that are changing the game within townships. And he did all of this research from his desktop and doing some immersion sessions in the township. Today he's the head of township economies for a major bank, and he's a techpreneur in the township economy. You know what his product was? He spoke to a lot of the small enterprises and he found that they cannot afford marketing. He reached out to some guys in India who for 8,000 Rand built him a technology where if you just upload the business you're doing, it creates an AI marketing poster for you. And he's now distributing that for 8,000 in the township. So I will wrap up, but this was just a blueprint to show you how do you go about, even if you are not an AI techpreneur, understanding and unpacking a problem statement, which then can lead you to now achieving, and one of my career touch points was building an SME bank. So this was the tech output of really understanding the problems that our SMEs face. So guys, there's still a lot more for me to go through. If I've created an awareness for you that yes, you have a place to play, whether you are a creative, a business administration graduate, a lawyer, in solving problems, I hope I've done my job. Thank you so much.
You really have done a brilliant job in informing us that if a potato can turn into vodka, you can turn into anything you want. You got me there by the vodka there. A round of applause again for Mr. Maharaj. Our final speaker for the day will be an academic who will be looking at academia collaboration to produce future-ready graduates, and is a professor from the Tshwane University of Technology. A round of applause for. There we go. It's the head of the Department of Economics here at the Tshwane University of Technology. Let us welcome Professor Zerihan.
Thank you very much. Now, since morning, we had an elephant in the room. Then we have been slicing it. Now we come to the end so that you can swallow it, the whole big elephant. So my presentation will be on still financial sector and AI. My name is Mulatu. Thank you very much. Program director is so excellent. And not just only the program director, the previous speakers actually make my life easier. So everybody touched the same thing from different perspectives, especially from application point of view. You see, I'm a academic. You know, most of the time we are just focused on abstract. So more often, abstract hides the main theme, the most important issue. But now we are all became practitioners. So right. I am also a TUT alumni. This prouds me a lot again. I did my PhD at the University of Pretoria, DBA at Tshwane Business School. So I'm still the product of TUT. So the objective, you know, what differentiates academics from other practitioners, we start from the objectives, okay? So the objectives of this presentation is really to just highlight major features of AI in financial sector. So that's the objective. This is the outline of presentation. We try to see some background. It's always good to have background. For example, now, most of the participants here in Africa, and especially even in this room, most of you are young. That is the beautiful thing. The future is for the youngsters. You can see in Africa, you can see my slide, except all 20 plus 15 plus 36, more than 90% of the population in this continent are youth, youngsters. So, in the beginning of the 20th century, there was a say that, can Africa claim 21st century? And at that time, 25 years back, I said yes. Imagine we had no AI at the time. Some of us, we were not even have laptops, okay? But now, imagine now we have everything in our fingertip, and having 90%, more than 90% of young population, Africa can claim 21st century. Do you agree? Yes, indeed. We can make it. We have everything now possible in our finger point. Okay, everything. So the younger population. So what is the advantage of having this young population? I just want to highlight the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth industrial revolution. Okay? Africa missed the first one. We completely missed. We missed again the second one. We missed again the third one. Okay? Now we are currently in a fourth and transferring to the fifth. You see, even though we missed the first, the second, the third, we have huge opportunity now to claim the fourth and the fifth industrial revolution. Why? Most African population, except me now, are young. And the young, can do anything. Even you can see now the previous speaker talks about potato. Yeah? You are far better than potato. You can make things to happen. So AI in fourth and fifth industrial revolution is a game changer now. We have a game changer. We should not be afraid of it. In academics, we are always worried about plagiarism, many things. Yes, we don't commit plagiarism, but we should not be afraid to explore ethical use of AI. There are some institutions, even some individuals telling us, oh, no. We always want to keep in a silo. They want to keep us in a small circle so that we are afraid. No, we are allowed to explore. You and your supervisor can agree what to use, okay, how to use it, then take advantage of existing AI technologies. So I don't want to spend time. My presentation will be available for you to download. AI definition is clear there. The goals of AI really to make life simple. Simple definition of why AI. AI is there to make life simple. Actually, the beauty of technology. You see, in economics, we have now dynamic DSG, dynamic stochastic general equilibrium model. That's a very cumbersome model. Only few economists have been proud of it and understand it. Now, given the use of AI, DSG is now became so simple. Econometrics has been a problem. Now it became so simple. So AI is there to make life simple. All the speakers talk about AI, but it's not fair not to mention the father. Always don't forget your father. Father figure, having a father is always privilege. Yes, mothers can do the same. The father of AI, known as Alan Turing, he just lived short from 1912 up to 1954. He mentioned about that machines can do as better as humans. So that was the inception, and now imagine now in 2025, where AI developed significantly. That is for the tribute for the father of AI. I just want to bring to your attention this slide. You can see Africa, our continent. We are so afraid of AI, but we never used AI. We entirely never used, just only 2% from the global percentage. USA 45%, China 17%, Europe 24%, Africa just 2%. Colleagues, especially young students, don't afraid to use AI. Please, let's make this percentage at least 10% before 2030. After 5 years, this figure has to change so that we can implement AI nicely. AI grows in research. AI has been really a good assistant in making research simple, but ethically, there are different types of AI. I don't want to waste your time because my presentation is available. Now the focus, AI in finance. You know, I'm an economist, but when I came, the journey where I joined to explore finance was because of my student. You know, students, we are also learning from you. You know, we are not just teaching students. We are also learning from students, especially good students. So we happened to find a very good student. She came up with the idea of cybercrime. Okay? Then we start the journey, and I got interested to know this finance. I know that all the theories in finance are originated from economics, but the cybersecurity, all the algorithms, AI applications came from my venture to supervise one of my good students, Dr. Ista. She is now residing in Nigeria. So AI is so helpful in cybercrime, mitigating cybercrime. By the way, we published a very good book on mitigating and addressing issues related with cybercrime. All came from our engagement with my student, okay? Customer Facebook, customer feedback is now all the banks, literally all the banks are using customer feedback using AI. You can see how it is useful. We are preparing students to work in the financial sector without the knowledge of AI. That really doesn't make sense. So we need to create awareness. Really, the senior director is doing a great job organizing such a fantastic, very clear, very good seminar like this. It also increases efficiency. You know, economics is a science of efficiency. We always talk about efficiency, doing things in a least costly way. Okay? So now AI is there to make your life easier and promote efficiency. It's a good thing. AI in finance is really, we all said about it. I don't want to spend time. Now the timekeeper is so showing me a 0 minute left, but I just wrap up. Application of AI is common in academics, you know, especially now when we are supervising students. Really, we need to also utilize AI features in an ethical way. Industry, academia collaboration in AI also promising and working. We can also, but there are some issues. You can see a pregnant African mother. Okay? So for us as Africans, we need to really manage the consequences of AI. AI is not just pollution-free. AI is not a smokeless industry. There are some claims that there are some industries which are without smoke. But AI is not smokeless industry. AI has smokes. We need to manage the consequence. That depends on human intelligence, not just AI. Data privacy, bias in fairness, okay? These are all the issues. Cultural preservation is important to manage. Takeaways, conclusions. We all believe that AI can change, okay? Is a game changer. Then how can we use it? We need to use it efficiently, Really, that is the takeaway. The other point is, I just want to mention about some takeaways. I think I'm not allowed to do so. Thank you very much. My last take is, you remember before 10, 20 years, we never know about computer. But now we know all. But AI literacy is also very important. Thank you very much.
Another round of applause for Prof. Prof, I can see you are very efficient. Someone took your seat on the panel. Let's give him another round of applause. I think just to end it off for the day, let us now engage in a panel discussion where we will be looking at the future of work in fintech, the challenges and opportunities. So I am going to be inviting the previous speakers to come and join Prof here, starting with Mr. Maharaj from Vodacom. Please come join us. Let's give him a round of applause. And Tate Mawela also come and join us on the panel. And lastly, Mr. Vuyani Ntanjana also come and join us. Okay. I don't know if we can just make that. Okay. All right, we'll create space here. And to facilitate the panel discussion, let us welcome Mr. Tsidiso Muhlomi, the Senior Director for the Institute for the Future of Work here at the Tshwane University of Technology. Let's give him a round of applause.
Program Director, thank you so much for the second bite with the discussion today. As I have mentioned earlier, when I did the opening, I said that the purpose of the discussion today is to empower the students, inform them, enrich them, but also to change the narrative in the sector. And I am hoping that with the panel, we are going to actually contribute towards that. The earlier session that we did before the short break covered the issue around the ethical use of AI and the regulatory framework, which was addressed by the South African Reserve Bank. It's a rich topic, which we can actually spend the whole day dealing with it. And we then had the Financial Sector Transformation Council talking numbers in terms of the transformation in the sector and also the mandate they have. And we also then had the Banking Association South Africa looking at the AI and the role it plays in the transformation. And we then had Dr. Denner, who basically spoke about academia within the sector. And one of the things that I like to say about academia is that unfortunately we don't move at the pace that transformation and innovation is moving. Institutions of higher learning, they are like a pregnant elephant. We move very slow. And it is sessions like this that assist us in the direction that we ought to move. And I'm hoping that we will contribute towards that. And colleagues, I also have been listening to you, banking sector. You have spoken about your role, your mandate. And one of the big thing that came out of that presentation for me is the sector skill plans, which basically then addresses the skills in high demand. And African Bank, you spoke around job displacement and financial inclusion. And you also spoke about how to prepare yourself, which would then have dealt with opportunities. And Mr. Maharaj, You were quite practical, and I think that your presentation covered the second characteristic in terms of the kind of a graduate we want to produce. So the question is going to be also towards that direction. And Prof. Mulatu, you spoke about artificial intelligence, and especially within the context of academia. And one of the things that I would also then want to be looking at is how do we bring everything together from the perspective of academia, industry, civil society partnership. Now, the first question that I want to have for the banking sector, in your research, if you were to tell us about top 5 of the skills in demand within the sector? That is the first question. Number 2, you spoke about skilling, upskilling, and reskilling, if I were to put it in that order. What role do you think banking sector, the industry, academia, and the civil society can play to make sure that we avert job losses? And number 2, to make sure that we create the future cohort of employees in the sector. So that is the question. Let's actually give you that time to, you can go ahead and talk to us on that.
Thank you for the questions. I think in terms of the critical skills that are in demand, we're looking at skills that are informed by the 4IR. And those include digitalization and new technology. And we also look at the skills that related to cybersecurity and risk management. We're also looking at the skills that relates to regulatory processes, because the banking sector is a sector that is highly regulated. We also look at the skills that are related to customer centricity, to make sure that the customers of the sector, indeed they get the right products at the time they want to get them. Therefore, in terms of making sure that we get these skills, we have programs where, for instance, we fund these skills as an organization. And initially I talked about tenders, and I also talk about opening of funding windows. I want to be honest, I hate the tender processes. I believe in the funding windows because the funding windows will be more, you get what you want. But on the tender process, sometimes as you want people to implement these skills, it depends on the cheapest bidder. Even if the cheapest bidder does not have that capability to do this kind of work. Therefore, we open funding windows where we allow everyone, and we have a program called strategic projects, and there we allow innovation. I was listening to the gentleman who was talking about the funding earlier on when the other previous speakers were talking. And it was an interesting question to find out where you can get funding. And I was saying to my colleague Evans, who's here, saying, that question is ours because we have a program called strategic project, where, for instance, in that one, we are not necessarily looking at what is specific to the banking sector. We're just looking at innovative projects. Then, in terms of the reskilling and the research that we have to do, we talked about collaborations. When I listed the list of stakeholders that we have to work with, this kind of work of skills development requires a collective effort. As a sector, we cannot do this work alone without involving other critical stakeholders like universities. That is why we have a program where, for instance, we appoint research partners
we appoint research partners or research chairs, where, for instance, we appoint a university to specifically focus on a particular research project in a certain field for a certain period of time, so that that research institution can also be able to understand the institution, the bank sector itself, and also make sure it does the research that is in demand, that is focusing on helping the young people of this country. We don't want to do a research that is too academic, that will gather dust without being implemented. We want a research that brings about recommendations that are feasible to implement, that tells us about the challenges that are facing young people. Therefore, our research should be a research that is meant to empower young people, like, for instance, understanding the skills that are in demand and what should be done with those skills in terms of making sure that we fund them. Even our bursaries, we have turned around the issue of bursaries to say now our bursaries should focus on the skills that are coming from the sector skills plan, which include fourth industrial revolution. We have a bursary now that focuses on the fourth industrial revolution, that talks to the issues of technology as well as artificial intelligence and other innovations. We want young people to select good courses to make sure that at the end of the day, they can be able to get opportunities to be employed or start their own businesses. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So basically, what you are saying is, from the institution perspective, there are opportunities that can be gleaned.
Yes.
And you're also then saying you are open for collaboration. And now, basically, to try and be, Prof. Mulato, I was afraid when you started that we might be in trouble with SPCA about cutting the elephant into pieces. But in order to eat the pieces that we have cut, we need to identify what role each can play, and you have articulated that very well. Now, African Bank, here is a student sitting here studying public finance. And you know that in finance, probably any department might only have 3 or 4 people in finance department, which basically might make the student redundant. Now, the question would then be, from the perspective of the emergence of technology, which we are then saying this technology is not a foe, but it's a friend. How can the particular individual, from the you're speaking from the finance sector, how can the particular individual student who might be displaced, misplaced by tech, rebrand themselves and make themselves relevant in the space?
Wow. Wow, yeah. That's the danger of being with doctors and professors. Look, yeah, it was interesting when you start opening your question with public finance. I'm from private financing environment, but I do get the essence of the question. Look, and I've been trying to, and to be honest, part of my hypothesis was really around this question around displacement and inclusion. And by inclusion, really, I was trying to, again, be broad as possible. And listening to your question, you now expanding into other areas of exclusion. So you could have digital inclusion, exclusion, financial inclusion, exclusion. But then again, it could be access to markets or job markets and being relevant to participate. And my view is simple. Every day I head up a team of designers. They design solutions for customers. And one of the things I always ask them, the question is that, who are you designing for? All right? You must think the end in mind, and the end in mind, or what you call a definition of done, is that end customer. Now, if you are in a job market or you are in the early stages of your career and you're trying to define, you have to start with that end in mind. You have to have a vision, all right? Because if you don't have a vision, every road will lead you everywhere. you know. So we really, when we, even from a product, from African Bank perspective, when we build products, we've learned the skills of really putting ourselves in the shoes or having that end in mind, and then curate our products to suit the person who's supposed to consume them. Now, if you are a student or an emerging or an aspirant, you know, early in your career, have that end in mind. Think about it. How do you look like? Write a newspaper article. When I'm 50 years old, and there's an article about me, what would it say? And then from there, work backwards. And then isn't there that a technical definition of finance, public, private, it really doesn't matter. Okay? The reality becomes what you are applying to your environment to take advantage of the opportunities of this technology and AI that is available. So it sounds like it's a theoretical, you know, a model, but in real life, and that's what I was trying to link it to how we are currently building products within the bank. It's really being honest to the end in mind, have that vision, and with that vision, then work out, you know, the tools and the roadmap and the pathways that lead you to that environment. And we as a bank, we are available to help you in this, in that journey.
Yeah, let me check. Probably there's some few people that are my age. Who remembers Steve Austin? Demand van die Stal. And the concept, basically, it was building a model man for the future. Basically, what you are saying is that the students or everyone who is listening need to start thinking what kind of an employee they want to be and their relevance to the particular potential future employer. Okay. No, thank you. Mr. Maharaj, I liked your take. Artificial intelligence is creating solutions, tuning out solution at a fast rate. And some of the solutions, somebody was talking about DeepSeek, to say that DeepSeek basically can, pick numbers like crazy, which basically sometimes might mean the actual scientists might be in trouble. Or other people. We are not saying they're in trouble. Now, the question would then be, sitting here, being trained in finance, different aspects of finance, how can we model ourselves as entrepreneurs versus as those who need jobs? We understand that the job market is overly saturated. Now, here I am, I'm starting to think, I'm studying accounting. Maybe I can be a solution specialist instead of a CA, or maybe I can be something. Can you basically take us maybe 2-3 steps on that transition?
Thanks so much for the question. So I'm going to keep it very simple. And yes, employment and the private and public sectors are obviously trying to do as much as possible to solve for the high unemployment rates. However, if you look at the life cycle of us as South Africans, we fall in different buckets. They are, and let's talk about post-school. There are some of us who are post-school who do not have funding to get into university. There's a bucket, a number of us in that bucket. There are those who are in university, who are currently in university. There are those who are completed university and are looking for their first job. And if you take our total number of youth and divide them, you'll get different buckets. And within those, there are different problems to be solved. So if we look at the buckets around those that finish university and are now eligible for a skill job. So you have either you enter a graduate program, an internship, you're fortunate enough to work with an SME within what is called Friends friends, relationships, associates, networks, right? So you typically might get access to an opportunity there. But for those that do not, how do you, and to the question that was posed, enter and become an SME? And for that, it requires you to have some exposure into the corporate ecosystems. So for example, if you did a digital marketing degree, you can become a digital creative strategist and run your own SME. But if you've done, for example, a bachelor in administration, your offering might be to offer project management skill sets as a consulting business. However, there needs to be that 5-minute snip of the different industries and the problems they face that need to be shown to these young graduates. So for example, what is private equity? I'm sure many of you are wondering the same thing I am. What is private equity? And what role could you play in private equity? Investments. What is the value chain of activities that happens in an investment firm? How does one, as an SME, play a role in, for example, if you studied supply chain and you want to start a procurement business, you can't do that from a base of zero knowledge and education. So we need to give a very high level view of these industries to our exiting graduates so that they can start thinking about how they solve problems and through their own businesses. So I have a formula. If there's anything you want to solve for, it goes like this: awareness, conversation, trust, conversion. So the first step to converting anything is awareness. We cannot expect our young students to become SMEs by not creating an awareness of what is it that's out there. You know, great, you did your economics module, you read about the economics of the past. How is your economics background going to solve for a logistics business? And what problem can it alleviate? Because ultimately, we paid for problems that we can solve and skills that we're able to bring. But the challenge you have is you're leaving varsity without the practical baseline or awareness of solving for those industries. So it's a simple thing. Let's create and bring in experts at final year that give people an education of how they currently partner with SMEs, how they're going to partner with SMEs in the future, and this will help our students craft the storyline going forward.
Thank you so much. Prof. Mulato, now we have started chewing the pieces of the elephant. They are a bit salty, and we are thirsty. And the industry have spoken about opportunities.
Yeah.
And we have banking sector speaking about funding, speaking about programs for reskilling and upskilling. We then had the African Bank, which basically integrated the approach from the finance sector perspective and looking at how can we transform the journey of the students. And then we then have Vodacom speaking about the entrepreneurial journey. Now, it basically means that we have the tools at hand. However, as you are standing in the intersection that is academia, how can you, from the academic perspective, take the ingredients that have been presented today to make sure that we create future-ready graduate, number one. Number two, how do we take the same ingredients to make sure that we collaborate in innovating with the industry?
Really, these are very articulated questions. I really appreciate Senior Director organizing such a nice platform for all academicians like me. It's a great takeaway from these presentations. So especially when I heard about presentation by Mr. Maharaj and all the speakers and the speakers in the morning, I was articulating what my curriculum looks like. Okay, so our curriculum is really obsolete. And we cannot produce future-ready graduates just teaching textbook theories, just textbook prescriptions. Unfortunately, most of our textbooks are not even South African. We are borrowed textbooks from abroad, and we are trying to teach those textbooks in classroom. So what we need to do is, for every mentorship of our students, there must be industry partnership. Okay? Now, when I'm supervising a master's student in a given topic, I should have an industry co-supervisor where he or she can bring the industry-related issues. Especially now, Maharaj mentioned about township economies. Our university, Harankua, our Faculty of Finance and Economics, is in the township. Okay? In South Africa, townships are with a lot of unemployment, socio-economic problems. So as an institution sitting in the middle of the township, we need to address societal issues in collaboration with industry partners. So we need to revisit our curriculum in a such way that, even though sometimes it doesn't require a major change in the curriculum, just a guest speaker, like now we did this morning and now this afternoon. We can invite people from the industry who can speak the reality in the ground, so that we can update our syllabus for every module and the entire programs in our curriculum. So I also touched about collaboration. This time, especially in the 21st century, we cannot change. We cannot bring change without collaboration. I am just economist, understanding some theories and application economist. I cannot be everyone, okay? Now, AI is a new tool now in my disposal. So if I'm afraid, most of academics, we are so reluctant and we are so resistant for change. We want to keep our status quo. No more, no less. Keep it as it is. But that is not the time now. Our time is dynamic, things are changing, then we need to collaborate. We need to bring our industry partners to our classrooms, to our laboratories, so that we can collaborate together and produce solutions for our own problems. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, just one more thing from my side, and so many questions and insights. What I'd love to offer everyone in this room, and we can do it actually to the future of work, a masterclass in new business venture creation that I will offer to each and every one of you here, either one-on-one or in a group setting, where we present to you the problems that industries are facing across retail, banking, insurance, having vast experience. 2, how to go about creating a business pitch deck. 3, how to use AI to market your business. And that is the level of intention we need to get to assist our young graduates into moving into entrepreneurship. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, I would expect the people in the room to be those people that understand rent and cents and that concept that says time is money. And so we're going to open it up for questions. I'm going to take 2 from this side and 2 from the other side. So conceptualize your question well. If it's a comment, tell us from the onset it's a comment, not a question. I'm not sure where are the mics. Yeah, there's a hand there, the blue shirt at the back, and there are 3 hands that side, but I want 1. I would have actually preferred a female. Yeah, there's a female there. And then there's a blue shirt at the back. First, start with the blue shirt at the back left. Yeah.
Thanks. Greetings to everyone. Thank you very much for such an interesting program. I've learned quite a lot. Before I proceed, my name is Vusumu Zipeng, and I come from an institution that provides technical support to national governments on matters related to illicit financial flows, terrorist financing, money laundering, and other financial related crimes. So the reason why I mention this, AI technology has provided many opportunities that have been presented by the speakers before us. But one sector that has created most jobs is the mobile payment systems, with Vodacom leading with M-Pesa. The last time I checked, they had over 600 agents, so meaning that they've created over 600,000 jobs. They've hired or created opportunities for over 40,000 developers to create mini apps within the M-Pesa ecosystem. So opportunities are endless. But within the same vein, in interacting with national governments, they've identified in their national risk assessments related to terrorist financing is that individuals involved in financing terror in conflict-prone zones use mobile payment systems. So it's quite a huge problem within the region. In fact, in 2021 alone, about 88.6 billion US dollars left the region in illicit financial flows, and it moved to some of the jurisdictions that I've mentioned that are prone to conflict. So whilst technology in the financial services industry has created opportunities, it has also created major challenges that threaten national security, that threaten the global financial system, the stability of the global financial system. So there is a push from governments to regulate the industry. And we know very well that the biggest stumbling block to innovation is a strong arm from government. Once government introduces strong regulation in the industry, in the financial services industry, there will be a problem. Innovators here, you won't have young people creating new solutions and disruptive solutions. So my question is, how do we reconcile as developers? I'm a developer, by the way, trained developer. My undergrad was paid for by Bank Sita, by the way. So I'm a beneficiary of some of the interventions you spoke of, Mr. Vuyani, in reskilling young people and all. So how do we as developers, innovators, and disruptors in the industry regulate ourselves before government, not understanding our field, regulate us and become a jackpot in our innovation? Thank you.
Thank you. Let's take the question there as well. Let's get that the second one, and then we cover them.
Hi everyone, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Ipuben Johnson and I studied at TUT. I have diploma in survey and advanced diploma in project management. So I would like to share just a bit of my journey ever since I completed with my studies. So I have 7 years in roads construction, but the only thing that I have experience on is working on site. So there isn't much experience of working in the office. So recently this year, I just opened up a LinkedIn app so that I can be exposed to companies. So, but it happens that whenever I apply, I get a negative response or an unfortunately response. So I wanted to, so now that I got the invitation of this AI and technology in the financial sector, I think I can also see the gap and of my self-development, of where I need to develop as an individual, that maybe I can study a course relatable to what's happening now in the industry and in these years of days. So there's one thing that also the professor or the lady who spoke about engineering, she spoke about the engineering sector. I seem to have a problem with the engineering sector. I do not know if it's only me who has noticed it or become aware of it. Like, we struggle to get jobs in the engineering sector. it's one thing that we struggle to occupy as engineers and surveyors, or at least in the engineering sector. And so now, fortunately enough, I've opened my own company, and now I'm running a road maintenance site with a good institution, obviously, a good company. And now I've been wanting to get funding for a franchise that I've always dreamed to open. So I wanted to get an answer for that how do I get full funding, because I've inquired with a bank, a specific bank, and they said they cannot assist me fully with financially. They can just give me a portion, and I, as an individual, I need to come with some amount as well. So I also approached CEDA, if I'm not mistaken, and CEDA has said to me that they can only give me 50% as well.
Yeah, I think, can I have a chat with you post this?
Okay.
Because I think the type of funding that you require is a bit different from, the discussion that we are having. But I can be able to direct you to the right direction.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you so
it.
much. Let's take that question before it gets cold, and then we're going to go that side.
So thanks so much. Great question. I'll keep my answer 10 seconds. I think with where we are in South Africa, we have compliance and regulatory experts, but we don't have enough people getting it done. So if you are interested in building a technology business, yes, there's risk and regulation, which obviously experts and bodies will intervene to assist you. But my advice to everyone is get it done. Let's take action. We are in crisis mode at the moment. Our young entrepreneurs, our young students do not have even access to employment opportunities. So the only thing they really have is their ability to solve problems and ideas which they can take forward. So let's take them forward. We'll get the ideas prototyped. We'll get the right compliance and regulators involved with experts like yourself. And we'll solve those problems. But like I said, we're in a place where we just have to start getting it done. Regulation and compliance will need to be influenced to assist us in expediting our visions and missions as Africa.
And also, I think the question that you have asked, it also then speaks to the skills deficit that we have from the perspective of cybersecurity and the experts within that space, and which is an opportunity for most who are sitting here with their background in financing and probably their inclination towards technology. So it's something that people need to think about.
Just want to add to that. So let's look at it this way. The reality of South Africa is that we've been grey listed. Simple as that. Now, coming back to the question you asked earlier or directed to me, in there we were focused on jobs, having jobs available. But one of the previous speakers spoke about skill. All right. Now, what tends to happen now currently, and if you look at the fintech, is actually a good example of covering your answer, is that banks, institutions, they have so much capacity to absorb from a employment perspective. What then needs to happen is what we call a creation of ecosystem. Now, it's in the ecosystem that you bring your skill, publish it, and in publishing it, you interconnect. And it's in there that if you publish these skills, make yourself available through APIs, fintech, whatever it might be, that this country needs those services to get ourselves out of the grey listing. And then from there, issues of regulation and over-regulation, self-regulation, versus the innovation. I mean, to be honest with you, the way I see, at least in the financial sector perspective, the Reserve Bank has adopted what is called risk-based approach. Meaning, we always have to balance the regulation and protection versus the development of the country and obviously associated innovation. Just, I just want to touch on that question, but generally, and I mean, you answered it yourself. Colleagues, there's something called being investable or investor ready. Now, I think from either academia or this kind of opportunities you're providing, we need to focus on that. We need to start focusing on young emerging entrepreneurs to get them to be investor ready. Because what I'm seeing and hearing lots of times is people have ideas and they think they can knock at the door and somebody will just open the check and fund. But between the idea and the check coming, there's a process called being investor ready or being investor ready. So that's a very important, I think, aspect that maybe in the future we need to zone and hone on that. So.
Thank you so much. I see a hand at this table here in the beginning. There are two hands close by here. Where's the mic? Oh. You can actually give one at the back there first, and then we can come to the front. And remember that you are standing between everyone and lunch.
Good afternoon. My name is Rahul Hetishai. I'm a student at TUT. My question is, I heard that Mr. Maharaj talking about a program that provides intensive knowledge about AI. So my question is, how can we access the program, or what is the procedure for registering for it? Thank you.
Okay. No, it's fine. We'll.
So between myself and Institute of Future of Work, we will agree how we structure a masterclass and give you access to this.
Okay. Thank you. And then let's take another hand here in the front, and that should be.
Thank you very much. My name is Mpho Mudise. From what has been said and what we see every day, there's high level youth unemployment in South Africa, and we can't deny that. So what is the education institutions and the industries that forms the business ecosystems doing to bridge the gaps that says, when I graduate today, I'm industry ready, I'll be employable, so that if a job comes, I can be able to apply for that position without being even required to have a certain experience. Because right now what we are facing as young people, we are competing with all the people who has industry experience and we're just fresh from college. So what is that the industry and the universities are doing to make sure that they bridge that gap, to ensure that when I graduate, I have necessary skills, knowledge, and whatever is needed to be industry ready? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's take another question here, then we can give to the panelists. Here in front.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jessica Matonzi, a third-year student at TUT. So my question is directed to Mr. Vuyani. I heard you speaking about the work integrated learning programs, right? So given the growing demand for work-ready graduates, how can we as students utilize these programs to become not like a graduate requirement, but to use it as a competitive advantage in the job market, especially in terms of how can we present the experience and the certificates we earn through the program? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me give the panelists to answer, and then I will also then have a bite on those.
Thank you for those brilliant questions. I think let me start by commenting on the question that was asked by the Executive Director. That was on how do we model ourselves as entrepreneurs. I just want to indicate that SETAs do have programs on entrepreneurship development. Sometimes it will be called SME development or rural development. Therefore, when a company is registered, it qualifies, it is eligible to apply for funding for its development, so that you are trained on various processes of business management.
I thought let me raise that. We have a funding for that. We have a program called Alternative Banking at BankSita, which deals primarily with such programs. Secondly, the question on work readiness processes. I think that is a very, very critical question. You know, the first point that we need to look at now is to have a good choice of careers or courses that you want to pursue as young people. You know, in my time, we used to study locus and religious studies, even if you are not intending to be a pastor, just to want to get a certificate. But today's world has changed completely. You know, there are two things that you have to focus. Look at a career that will be able to give you a job, or maybe start a business. We need practical education. You know, sometimes the type of education that we are having, which is more like a long-term education whereby you study and complete a degree, does not necessarily sometimes give you the skills that are in demand. You know, when Dr. Chilwane talked about the importance of achieving a skill, I think that's very, very good, because sometimes you need to look at the practicalities of what you are studying, the opportunity to integrate theory into practice, because sometimes when you graduate, you have not had an opportunity to integrate theory into practice, which makes you to be ready, you know, to be employed. Therefore, we need to look at even at short courses that will assist you. While, for instance, you are still studying your degrees, there are a number of online courses that can assist, that can make you to be marketable, and also looking at other opportunities of starting a business. Because we have seen from our research that most of the jobs in South Africa now are created by small businesses. Most of the jobs, that's what our research is telling us. Most of the jobs are created by small businesses. The more we empower small businesses, the more we are creating more jobs. Our research in our sector skills plan last year demonstrated that in small businesses employ plus minus 5 to 8 employees. Therefore, if we empower those small businesses, therefore we'll be creating more jobs. Because when companies, big companies these days, they don't want to, they retrench actually, you know, to reduce the cost. Therefore, on the wheel, I think this is a very important part of the learning process, which is becoming a problem, because sometimes will is used as a partial fulfillment of a qualification rather than, you know, capacitating the student to get skills. Therefore, it requires a turnaround strategy within the academia to make sure that we don't look at this process from a final year perspective. As the student starts in the first year, we give that student an opportunity to go in practice, and we make sure that we prolong those sessions. For instance, at BankSita, we'll just talk about something that is sort of different. You know, we introduced a 3-year internship program. You know, if you look at many internships, it's a 1-year internship. We said, this thing is not working for young people, because when the young person is beginning to grasp what the organization is doing, he has to leave. We said we want to have a 3-year internship program where we provide young people with an opportunity to integrate theory into practice and get work experience. And our measure of success of that program is not the number of completions, people completing the internships. It's also the number of absorptions, learners who get jobs while they are doing the internship. We don't expect you to complete the internship. If you get an opportunity when you are still doing a second year, you are employed, you leave the internship, we give that opportunity to another learner. You know, because most of the jobs now, they will say, we want 2 to 3 years experience, and yet the internship is a 1 year. Therefore, it doesn't make sense. Therefore, there is a lot of turnaround that is needed, both in the world of business, even within cities and within academia, to look at the processes of will. How do we make sure that the students get an opportunity to integrate theory into practice while they are still even in the first year? Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one more parting note, and I love this platform. It brings up all of my passion for the causes that I serve in a personal capacity. We talk about young people becoming entrepreneurs. The truth is, for many of them, it's a black hole. You build a business case, you get investor ready, you are investable, but where to from there? Long governance processes, time to become part of corporate supply chains, and various other. We need to then firstly educate our SMEs about problem statements that exist and have them practically trained and ready to provide services, like I mentioned, through new business venture creation. Two, a platform that's created for everyone under 40 who's starting a new business, and policies that are set up so that big corporates have to now put a percentage of their procurement processes into that platform. Because otherwise it's just noise. I can tell you this, you're going to build your business, you're going to get a dopamine rush from having got your CIPC number, but I can tell you it's only the beginning, and the road to hell is paved with good intention. You're going to struggle. So we need, and that can be driven from Institute of Future of Work, where we create a platform for under 40 entrepreneurs who are trained, practically business ready, and corporates then now have to harvest. Because what tends to happen is big corporates have certain service providers and the rich just get richer. We need to move some of that market share to our young entrepreneurs.
Thank you so much. I think the food might go bad if we go long. But let me thank the speakers and the panel. The amount of work and the time you have put in the preparation will not go to waste. And we will actually be having the presentations that you have made. But also then I like the willingness to say this is what we can offer. The office would be reaching out with to collect on the offers that have been presented. Maybe Program Director, I can say the words of thanks and then you can come through. Yeah, and to also then, one of the questions that was asked, which I would want to cover in my closing remark is, what is the university and the industry doing to make sure that students or the graduates are ready for employment? This is one of the platforms where we are creating a dialogue between the industry and academia so that we can understand where each one of us are. The reality is that sometimes we also think the industry knows what it wants, and you might find that they don't even know what they want themselves. And therefore, the dialogue like this, understanding the challenges that we are facing, would always assist in creating a more dialogue, but also then creating opportunities. Now, the Institute for the Future of Work, as I've mentioned in my opening, our role is to become the bridge between academia and the industry. And we have engaged the faculties, and we are signing service level agreements, which would see us introducing the industry more to the faculties and creating those linkages. And we have had the discussion with the Faculty of Finance and Economics, and the SLA will be signed very soon, and some of the programs we will be doing together to make sure that you are ready. And let me take this opportunity as well to thank the industry partners that came through to participate. The Banking Association of South Africa, Financial Sector Transformation Council, South African Reserve Bank, the University of Johannesburg, Faculty of Finance and Economics, Vodacom, Mr. Maharaj, the African Bank, and also the banking SETA. And also I want to thank the two program directors that we have. They always come through and then they always do the best. And we also thank the industry partners that came through. They might not be the university, what you call the TUT students, but they came through here today, and your presence and participation is highly appreciated. And we also want to thank the faculty members, the lecturers, the HODs who are here. I am happy that you could be here so that we understand each other, and together we can eat the elephant that we have chopped. And we will be compiling the report from this, which will have actionable points, including the masterclass in the venture creation and other aspects. And with these words said and done, once again, thank you so much for coming through and for participating. And I hope that what we have heard today will enhance and enrich our lives. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, another round of applause for our panel. And also a round of applause for the morning speakers, all three of them. Very insightful. A round of applause for Dr. Gregory and Mr. Mushomi for putting together this thought leadership seminar. Round of applause for them. That brings us to the end of our program today, but just some few hygienics. On your table, there is a QR code. If you will be so kind to scan that QR code so that you can we can keep your details, as well as have some feedback to the Institute. That QR code, you can just use your normal QR code scanner and scan it. Another announcement that I have to make, firstly, is to thank Papa Machiskawe for directing this program in the morning, and also thank you on behalf of myself. When Mr. Mushomi was thanking me, you didn't clap, so I don't know how much of a terrible job. So I didn't know how much of a terrible job I did, so at least those clapunyana one. I want to close this program by taking a quote from Kathy Wood, who's the founder of ARK Investment, an American finance company. And I quote, open quote, "The question is not whether AI belongs in finance. It's whether we can afford to manage money without it." Close quote. Ladies and gentlemen, lunch is served. Have a good afternoon.